Welcome to the Cosmetic Podcast.
This podcast amplifies the topics you want to hear about.
Cosmetic means being a person or thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that is dynamic or energizing.
Globally minded and locally focused.
I'm Keith Fenton.
And I'm Rodrigo Ross.
And so today we're going to talk about telling the truth.
Tell it!
Tell the truth.
Yes.
The true story about Rosa Parks.
Right.
And so one would hear this story about Rosa.
Come on, preacher, come on.
It would go December 1st, 1955.
Well,
after a long, hard day on her feet.
Both of them.
Rosa was frail, old black woman.
Wow.
She went there to sit down on the bus because she was tired. Feet was tired, so the driver told her to give up your seat.
Give it up.
For a white patron. And she refused because her feet was tired.
She was tired.
It was a long day. And no, she had just been tired of being oppressed.
Just tired.
And so that's what history books would tell you a little bit about Rosa.
Well,
but the truth is,
because that's not the truth.
That's not the truth.
That's not what actually happened.
Rosa was only 42 years old.
Right, so she wasn't a little frail old lady.
No,
now she was tired, but she wasn't a frail little old lady.
But some would say that she probably wasn't tired because she was a seamstress.
Right.
And so seamstress, they sit down all day.
Right.
And so it goes 6 hours that she had worked that particular day. And again, as a seamstress, she's sitting down all day. And so her
feet was fine.
Yeah, the feet was fine.
So she wasn't tired because of her feet.
But she was showing up tired of the oppression.
She was tired. That's what it was.
And so history tells us Rosa Parks was this meek and mild type of person. When in actuality, she really wasn't. She was kind of a little bit of a rebellious type of person.
Yeah.
I mean, she wanted to get things done because she was tired of all the segregation and everything that was going on during that time.
Yeah. And she even called herself rebellious. Even when she passed in 2005, the word quiet, right, or timid was most used in most of her obituaries and eulogies. But from her own writings that they discovered after her death, she never called herself quiet or timid. The word she used for herself was rebellious. And so, no, she was not this quiet, timid little lady.
Now, because in one of the stories goes that one of this little white kid was picking on her, and she picked up a brick and threatened to
hit him. Well, okay, Rosa.
Because she was tired.
She was tired.
So if we're going to use the word tired about Rosa, she was tired.
She was tired.
It wasn't from the physical place, but she was tired of all the stuff that was going on in her, that was surrounding her.
Yeah.
And she grew up with her grandfather too. And so her grandfather, he was very light. And so he could pass for being white.
Yeah.
He would walk around town with his gun in his holster.
Wow.
And so if somebody messed with Mr. Parks' children or grandchildren, he would put a cap up in their derriere.
He sounded like he was tired too. He was tired.
So let's get history right now that Rosa was not just this meek and mild type of person.
No.
She wasn't a passive person by any means, because the summer before her arrest, she had grown tired of just going down to the city officials and talking about all the concerns that were in the black community, and she wanted to see some action done. So well before her sitting down and not giving up her seat on the bus was she about action during that time.
And even before that, since her childhood, Rosa was involved in many times she would get chastised by her grandparents, and I'm sure it was in an effort to keep her safe, but she was very vocal about talking about everything that she knew that white men would do that was inhumane in the treatment of what she called at the time the Negro. So this was the bus boycott was not just this off the cuff, random, spontaneous thing. Rosa Parks had been an activist since childhood.
Yeah, and she wasn't the first. Many would say that she was the first to be arrested for doing that right there, but she wasn't. There was a number of folks from Montgomery that resisted the segregation that was going on the bus, and so one lady was Viola Viola White. You know, she did that in 1944, so well before, again, Rosa Parks.
Okay.
You know, Viola was beaten and fined for doing that right there. And then they said her case was still in appeals when she had passed away 10 years later.
Wow. And the reality is, the boycott in and of itself, that taking the seat or refusing to not take a different seat was not a random act. It was planned. Like, there were meetings. Rosa was a part of the NAACP chapter in Montgomery at the time, and they strategized on doing things to make sure that they kept awareness to, you know, the segregational things that were happening in Montgomery that were inhumane and unfair. So this wasn't a random thing where she just got on the bus and she was so spent that day. This was strategy.
Right. And she had on her mind about Emmett Till. You know, Emmett Till, the 14-year-old boy who had been lynched in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And she was taking that along with her when she was making this protest right here.
Yeah.
You know, she also, like you said, about, you know, the women's rights and thought about how the times that women were, I'm sorry, I'm getting just a little choked up and think about women that had been raped and just had found no justice,
right,
you know, in it all. You know, she was carrying all of that with her when she was this, because she was tired.
Yeah, she was tired. And, you know, most people just assume that because she was from Montgomery and the bus boycott happened in Montgomery, they closely aligned her with Martin Luther King, which she absolutely admired him. But she in herself said she sees herself more of a Malcolm X type, and that was her personal hero.
And you take it at that time, Rosa Parks was 42, and Dr. King at that time was only 26 years old.
Right, so she was older than him.
Yeah, he was just getting into it. And, you know, it's just amazing because when you think about Rosa Parks, one even would show from some of the pictures like she was maybe this middle-class church lady, but that wasn't the case.
No.
You know, the Parks family, they were not middle class. They grew up in this place called Cleveland Courts Projects.
Yeah.
I know what the projects look like.
I'm very well aware of what the projects look like, for sure.
Her husband was a barber, and then, you know, again, she was a seamstress, or like this assistant tailor, and she altered, you know, men's clothing at the Montgomery Fair department store.
Yeah.
You know.
And even as a child, being poor, she would always tell folks, it doesn't matter that I'm poor, I'm still going to speak out because I'd rather be lynched than to live and be mistreated and not be allowed to say I don't like stuff.
Right. And she was a strong Christian woman now. You know? So don't get that twisted. But, you know, that verse in the Bible where it talks about faith without works is dead.
Dead.
And
yes,
so
indeed.
she was about works.
Yeah, and so, you know, you would think that after all of that and after this game-changing move that the notoriety would be beneficial to Rosa, but the reality is her entire family faced death threats. They couldn't find steady work, and as a result, they all had to move to Detroit, which she said was the promised land that wasn't. She wanted to stay in her hometown of Montgomery, but it was just too dangerous for her.
Right. I mean, their family just went through so much down there, and that forced move right there, taking them all out of the comfort zone, taking them to a place that they thought that would be promising,
right,
but yet still that wasn't as promising as what the family thought.
Right, but you know, she said in her writings that it was worth it. So she has this writings. I would suggest everyone go and check that out. It's at the Library of Congress, where you can hear Rosa's voice, right? Get her perspective. She journaled all throughout her youth and even through the boycott, and to hear her talk about why she did this, because she loved Montgomery. She wanted to be there, and she knew that her and other African Americans deserved to be there. You will really get that narrative of poor little old tired old lady Rosa out your mind. Rosa's kind of rowdy. I like her style.
Yeah, she was that good trouble that brother John Lewis talked about. And so, I mean, what are the strategies you think we have to take now? I mean, like, she sat down on the bus seat.
Yeah.
Like, what steps would you see us taking now?
Well, I would say strategy. You hit it right there. Like, you know, there are some times when you have to seize the moment, right? But you got to look at it in a big picture. What is this moment feeding into? What is it holding up? What is it in service to? But as much as you can, you got to think through stuff. stuff. You got to plan. You got to get the right people at the table. You got to get your allies and your accomplices and your amplifiers, and you all got to get together on, what does the dream, so to speak, entail, and what does success look like. And you got to be unwavering. Rosa talked about it in many of her works. Don't get it twisted. She definitely was tired, right? She got tired. This work will definitely tire you out, but you got to be persistent. You got to keep moving on, and you got to strategize.
Maybe one of those strategies that everybody needs to be tired of being tired of all the stuff that is going on.
That's the first strategy.
And sit down and make a bold. Somebody has to step up and make some bold moves in place.
Yeah.
And so coming together at a place that we can agree upon to be able to move things forward, because we can sit around and talk all day long.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Faith again without works is that great that we're gonna have faith, but we gotta put some works to go along with that.
Yeah, and everybody's works looks different, right? Like some people are out there protesting and they're walking the streets. If that's not your thing, maybe you're out here registering folks to vote. Maybe you're out here going to your local government meetings and making sure that your voice is heard. Maybe you're out here helping young people galvanize and get their ideas together. Everyone's work looks different, but you need to be doing something.
Got to be doing something in order to move things forward, because there's enough work out there for us all to do, and so that we can have an America that is comfortable for all of us to be in, and a place that we want to see things continue to progress.
And even if what you do is tell the truth, right? That's another part of it. Rosa Parks, she told the truth, and as a country, I really do feel like if we are going to reconcile around racism, we got to start telling the truth. Tell that narrative the way it is. Wonderful person, Sean Patterson Howard, who is the mayor of Mount Vernon, former Y employee, she said you just gotta call a thing right? And you just gotta tell the truth sometimes. Change that narrative and let's work from there. And
make sure that the stories are told accurately as we go about. That we don't need to have some different story that some old feeble person that done start something. But no.
That wasn't the story.
That wasn't the story. The story is about a bright young lady who was very vibrant and had been doing the work for a long time, not just for herself, but her grandfather taught her those different ways also. So you're talking about generation after generation after generation who was standing up for the rights of people, and we have to be able to do that. What are you doing for your child? What are you doing for your nephew or your niece? We got to be able to pass those stories on down to make sure action continues on.
Well, drops the mic on that one, Keith. You said it.
All right, let's go.
All right, well, thank you for listening to Cosmetic,
where our conversations are global,
globally minded, and locally focused.
Give us some feedback at ymcadallas.org/Cosmetic.
And as always,
stay dynamic,
stay energized,
stay Cosmetic.